a friend of mine in 2015. I remember I met him. He's a French retired pastor who lives in Germany now, and he was involved with Christian Muslim relations and this, for his ministry. And he became friends with one of actually the top imam for North Africa in one of his projects. And this guy wrote him a letter of invitation to, or a letter to give of introduction, I should say, to give to this imam in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. Now I forget how my friend got his visa to get in there. He's a German passport. But anyways, he got in there, and so he in July of 2015 he's in America at a convention, and I meet with him. We go to dinner, and he's telling me the story. He said, "Last month, I just got out of Saudi, and I met a Saudi prince, and this guy said he will give us all invitation letters to go to Mount Sinai." And he knew that, like, this prince knew we wanted to go see Mount Sinai. So just to back, like, right now, it might not seem much, but remember when Ron tried he knew Mount Sinai was in Arabia in the middle 70s. There's a letter I have from one of the professors who was involved with Ron in 1977 or 78. The letter is dated, and it mentions Ron's activities at Nuweiba and that he believed Mount Sinai was in Saudi Arabia, and Nuweiba was the Red Sea crossing and on the Gulf of Aqaba. So, but Ron could never get in because Saudi was a closed Muslim country. You were not allowed to, like in Europe, you just show up. Like, you can get a tourist visa in some countries. Other countries, you just show up. Like Turkey, you don't need a visa anymore as Americans. You just show up here, they stamp you at passport control. You're in the country for 90 days. So Saudi Arabia, you either have to have a family member live there, invite you. You either have to have a business partner, a Saudi company, invite you for business reasons, or you're on your Muslim Hajj to Mecca if you're a Muslim. And this is the only way you can get in the country. Otherwise, there's no tourist visa. So Ron tried over and over to get a legal visa. Finally, in '84, December 83, he crossed over from Jordan with his sons, and then in '84 they were in Saudi Arabia, him and his two sons. They snuck in without a visa. They just walked across the unmarked border between Jordan and that northwest corner between Jordan and Saudi Arabia, and they entered. But they didn't spend much time there. They went to the base. They saw the mountain, but because the Saudis were doing some military work in the area, they were hitchhiking. So the local Bedouin driver who had picked them up and drove them there told them, "You guys need to get out of here." So he takes them, but because Ron's, according to his sons, he was injured coming in. Either he sprained his ankle or something. He couldn't go back through those sand dunes. So he said, "I'm just going to go to the border and get caught. I'll just go right through passport control." And he thought they'd just like slap his wrist and say, "Okay, you should not have come in without a visa. You're banned," or whatever. But anyways, his sons did not want to split up, so they went with him. But when they got to the border, instead of just being fined or kicked out, they were arrested and accused of being Israeli spies. And later, they find out when they were finally released, like 70 some days later. Uh, what they found out was one of Ron's close friends that he had told about this in America. Only Ron's family and two other people knew about it. I think one was Jim Irwin, and then this other guy who I won't name, but they all passed away anyways. But he was a journalist, a reporter, a photographer. But this guy knew, and according to the Saudis, they told Ron this man had called our embassy in America and said, "Look for these guys, Ron Wyatt and his sons. They're actually Israeli spies. They're in Northwest Arabia to document the military bases or whatever." And so that got Ron in really big trouble, and so they were stuck there, and they were finally let go thanks to Jim Irwin, and obviously God let. And so Ron was let go, but because of that, all this stuff was stolen, not stolen, but confiscated. So he had no documentation. No, all his photos he took, video, whatever is taken. So he just had a story to tell of what he saw, and so that he really wanted this documentation. Well, because it was in the news about this American being jailed, a Saudi high business official, or someone say he was kind of like a prince, but he wasn't from the royal family. Anyways, this guy in Tabuk, the province capital for that area, heard about Ron. He came to America, met with Ron, because Ron was claiming that the real Jebel Musa, Mountain of Moses, in Mount Sinai, is in this guy's hometown, or what do you want to call it, the home village for him. And so he met with Ron, and then Ron said, told him he wants to go back and he'll show the guy the site. So the guy was invited by Ron to go to Noah's Ark. This was March of '85, and that's where they met up with David Fasold, and he was on that trip when they saw the dug up grave site of Mrs. Noah. The Saudi prince was on that trip, and he saw Noah's Ark, and so then he gives Ron an official invite. So they made up a business contract because there's no tourist visas back then. So Ron got this business visa from the local man from Tabuk, and that got him and David Fasold into Arabia, and they go out to the mountain. And this time, with Fasold there, they're drawing. They document everything they can. They're making drawings. They're making notes, taking pictures and videos. And sadly, though, at the end of that, it was like maybe 4 or 5 day trip. At the end of that, the guy the year before who investigated Ron, the local police, they get involved again. They find out Ron is there. And because of some of the gold that was dug up at the base by the Saudis, because Fasold had some treasure hunting equipment, and they had pinpointed some gold at the base of Mount Sinai. And so this prince, or this local Tabuk guy, he had his men dig it up. And so they did find some gold. Well, the Saudi police got involved, and they were accusing Ron and Fasold of stealing treasures from Saudi Arabia. And they brought in a Saudi archaeologist from Riyadh. He flew into Tabuk, and at this prince's compound in Riyadh, he sees the video of that Fasold had made showing the golden calf altar site with the cow petroglyphs. And he actually congratulated Ron. Even Fasold said that he was there in the meeting, and the guy shook Ron's hand and congratulated him and said, congratulations for finding this out in the Mount Sinai. And he was even saying that these are cow petroglyphs from Egypt, ancient Egypt. They're not Saudi. And then when that was all said and done, everyone's tune changed, and because Ron, they asked Ron to stay there to excavate. And Ron had stuff going on in Turkey shortly thereafter, and he had to be in Ankara for the Noah's Ark project. He said, "Look, I'll come back later, but I need to go to Turkey." Well, you don't say no to the Arabs, and so sadly, that made them angry, and they basically took all of his pictures again, all the videos, all the notes, all the photos were taken, and they just left with their memory. And so again, Ron had no physical evidence of what he saw in Saudi Arabia. And so now fast forward to 2016, again, you still when we first went, we went on a business visa because a Saudi prince who my friend divinely met up with in Riyadh. He talked to him, and this prince believed that Mount Sinai, he knew about the whole theory, and he said, yes, Mount Sinai is in our country in Northwest Arabia. But he said it's very political. He said, and this was 2016. Now it's not as political, and people talk about it. It's on television there. But
I hear that basically the reason they kept it secret is because that the Saudi princes and all them, they know that this was the Mount Sinai. But the thing is that because they worshiped the altar of the golden calf, they built it, and they did some kind of pagan worshiping there. That according to Muslim law, they have to destroy it. So in order to keep that safe and keep it preserved, they put a fence around the place. Yeah, they deny it, put a fence around the place to keep other Muslims from coming and trying to destroy it.
It's kind of a mix of that, because what you have with the current Prince MBS, what they call what's his name, Mohammed bin Salman. He's actually open. He's building this Neom city or province
or something
that's
like
taken over. It's like Dubai 2.0, like bigger and better than Dubai. It's a bunch of sites in what's ancient Midian. So it's like 3 or 4 or 5, actually maybe a dozen by now, like resorts, couple cities.
Is that the line? So is that big?
That's one of them. Yeah.
City?
So that's one of them. Yeah. So one of the sites in Neom is the line. There's also Trojena, which is the mountain resort on Jebel Alaz, just like 5 miles or so north of Jebel. Yeah, so it's in the valley between. So Jebel Alaz, the actual mountain that has the blackened rocks and the cave of Elijah, that's actually called Jebel Makla, and that's what's behind you. That's Jebel Makla. Jebel Alaz is to the north about 5 or 6 miles, and that's the tallest peak of Jebel Alaz. And the whole area is probably the Horeb, like the whole region, based on reading the Bible. But on laws, they're actually one of the NEOM project. They're putting this winter resort, and they're going to have the 2029 Asian Winter Olympics there. That's like the grand opening for this resort. So they have like 10 huge brand new special green energy snow machines. It does get snow there once or twice a year, usually in January. It doesn't stick around too long, but I guess with the new snow machines and all this technology, they'll have a resort. But that's so there's different sites of this NEOM project that they're building. So there's a different mentality now with the new guy in charge. So back in Ron's day, let's say pre-MBS period, even 2016, we were sneaking around. We were told, in fact, we got caught a couple times, and they kicked us out. They said, you need to go this way, and they made sure we left. They followed us in their Jeeps, the Bedouins. And
Wow,
other ones,
I
they
guess
threatened
the
to take us to
Bedouins
jail.
they would either shoot you, or if you weren't able to bribe them, they would shoot at you, or they.
I know. Like Dr. Kim had, he was threatened to him and his family on the west side of the mountain. They were all by themselves. I never had any issues like that. I never felt like not safe physically, but I did feel like, oh no, I'm gonna get in trouble here and go to jail a couple times when they kicked us out and they threatened, saying, hey. You give us a little backsheesh, some tips, money. Otherwise, because you were flying your drone here, or I'll take you to the police station and then you can deal with them. And so we would just empty our pockets and give us all. This is all our money. That happened once to us at the base. But so then September 2019, things changed because they opened all of Saudi Arabia to tourism. So you can go on your own. You can write me an email. I can tell you how to get there on your own. You can go on our tours and go, have lectures I do at each site and explain all the history and ins and out of the Exodus research. You can go with another company. There's a bunch of companies, local and international. They'll bring people to Mount Sinai now. But before 2019, September, it was closed off and you had to sneak in. You had to have a business visa or be a Muslim to live there or a family member to get into Saudi Arabia. But God worked out so that my friend from Europe, he had this. I mentioned he had this letter of introduction from the top Muslim for North Africa, Morocco, Algiers, that whole area. This letter he takes to Riyadh. He goes to the mosque with his imam supposed to be at to give the letter to him. And say, hey, I'm here. Who are you, and all that. Dialogue with the guy. And he gets there. The mosque, the imam is not at the mosque. His assistant, whatever, tells him, I'm sorry, the imam's gone. I don't know, he's on vacation or whatever. But he tells my friend, and not his friend, who's another German guy. He says, why don't you go down the street to this palace? This prince might be interested in talking to you. So, okay. So they go down the street, and my friend tells me this a month later after it happened. He said, Andrew, I walk in the door, and as I walk in, Saudi television's interviewing this prince. And as I walk in, this guy is literally talking about the Exodus. And this prince says on national television, as soon as we find the body of the Pharaoh who died in the Exodus, that is one of the signs of the end times. And that's not in the Quran, so this is like extra beliefs or whatever, extra writings. But that got to my friend got his ears perked up. He never met this prince before, but he is in this palace now. And so as soon as the interview's over, he gets introduced to the prince. And this prince finds out that he grew up in Switzerland. So his first language he spoke was French, and my friend is French. And so they start speaking in French.
Wow.
They hit it off. They just hit it off. And so this prince, he invites them. He said, hey, why don't you come, you and your friend, stay for this banquet at the end of the day. And so my friend was telling me, he showed me pictures on his phone. He said, at this banquet, they had all these tables in this big hall, in the palace, full of different types of food. They had exotic pets. He showed them with a leopard and monkeys or whatever. They're petting these exotic animals. And then people who came to the banquet, there were the EU representatives, ambassadors, and they're all at their own table in front of where this prince ate at his table. But this prince wanted my friend and his friend. These are two nobodies. Remember, he's a retired pastor. He's not an ambassador or a business leader or a billionaire. And he says to my friend, he said, why don't you eat at my table? So at his table was the prince and these two nobodies. And they hit it off. And so he talked to him, said,
that's God right there.
Yeah, I know. This is an amazing story. Well, this is how I got involved. Just because so what happens? This prince finds out more about it, and so my friend tells him, "Hey, I have a bunch of friends who would like to see Mount Sinai," because they're talking about the Exodus. And this prince says, "Yes, we believe that Mount Sinai is here in Northwest Arabia." It's very politically, so we can't talk about it in the open. But then he says, "If you want to come back, bring a group." He says. So we had 10 people interested in going on this very first trip. He said, I'll invite you for one of my businesses. He's a multi-millionaire or billionaire. And so he had different companies. He said, one of these companies will invite you, give you a business invite so you can get your visa from the local consulate or embassy. So here in America for us, we had 10 people on that trip. 6 were Americans, I believe, and then 2 were European Germans, and then 2 were from New Zealand. And but this prince was telling my friend, he was saying, at that time, he said, my father-in-law is head of the Saudi Air Force. And so we have access, so we knew about the Exodus, but he said we had access to helicopters. And we would fly it up and down the Gulf of Aqaba in Saudi territory on that, eastern side of the coast. And we look for chariot parts. He said they actually found chariots. Now, my friend, he didn't show my friend any photos of chariots. And my friend didn't question him, like, okay, was it 4-spoke, 6-spoke wheels? Like, how are they preserved? How do you know? He's listening to the prince tell the story. But he said near a Magna, just south of, if you look at a Saudi map, Magna is the oasis called the Springs of Moses, and some believe it's one of the stopping sites of the Exodus. And so he said near that area on the Gulf of Aqaba, that's where they found the chariot wheels. And so, which is very interesting because you read Dr. Glenn Fritz's book, and he got his PhD researching the Exodus. He believes Mount Sinai is where Ron Wyatt had located it, and he believes Nueva is the crossing site. Well, Fritz believed that when the massive amount of water came down on the Egyptian army at Nueva, because that's like 850 meters deep, so a couple thousand feet of water crashed down on the Egyptian. That just their wooden chariots would have floated and pushed away all over the place. The bodies washed up where the Israelites were, but he believed that the wooden chariots would later go all the way down to near Magna, floating down there, and the Israelites would have seen it when they camped along the Red Sea. Numbers 33, 9, and 10 mentions a Red Sea coastal campground after Elam. And so this one spot, this is where the Saudi prince said they found, I don't know what type of wheel, but they were calling it, Egyptian chariot wheels that were preserved. So he believed that the Red Sea crossing, happened just north of there, whether it was Nueva or sometimes they say Wadi Tayyibism, which is just south. Again, you have to look at a map. But again, the whole point of the story is that this prince believed in the story, and he was willing to give my friend visas for all of us. And so he gave us this letter. And this is really interesting. This letter, it had the royal seal on it. It had all our names and passports for the 10 of us. It was all in Arabic, and then it had the prince's title and then the signature. And we all got a copy of it. And that letter, so normally when you go to turn in your visa application, it's quite a process for a business visa. You got to have your business documents. You got to have the invite letter from the Saudi company. You got to have all these official statements signed, like you're not going to break the laws, and that you're financially liable for your stay in Saudi Arabia. So all this stuff. There was a big packet. Every person had to fill out exactly, or they could deny your application. Even though he invited us, the Saudi embassy could still deny it. So when we made sure everything was set up, and we found a company in New York City who could go in and physically submit this to the consulate right across from the UN. And so we packaged everything up at the very, very top of this package. So normally it takes about 1 month to get a business visa approved. I put that Saudi letter for the prince on the very top. We printed on high quality paper and color. So it's just official document, put it on the very top. And we shipped it off, overnighted our, UPS it to the this visa processing company. They the next day walked it in to the Saudi consulate. That evening, they had all our stuff back approved. And so instead of taking 1 month, we were talking about 1 day. And so then they shipped it to us 24 hours later, overnighted our documents. We had our passports back with the full page visa stamp in it from Saudi Arabia. And that was in March, I think it was, of 2016. So then the next month, we were on our flight to the real Mount Sinai. And we saw so many miracles that happened on that trip. And since then, doing all this investigation. Now it's so simple to go in there. And a lot of people, they make videos and they've been out there on tours.
Can you tell us about some of those miracles?
Yeah, well, so this very first trip, I know of three miracles that happened. So we had a couple of people wanted to come on this trip, but basically there was no guarantee that even though we now had the visa, which is the hardest part, and we had our tickets, we're going into Saudi, and we had no one's the guy. My friend's been out to the mountain a couple times before that. One time he got in trouble by the police because he took a photograph, which he didn't know would be illegal, of a police officer he was having a chai, like he was drinking tea with this guy around a fire or in his office or someplace, and then he takes a selfie with the guy, and the attitude has changed, and and he got arrested, my friend, and he was interrogated for 5 hours out in the desert. Like, what are you doing here? Why are you taking pictures? Now it's no problem taking a photo, but you still don't take photos of military stuff or government buildings and of the women. But even back then, you're not even allowed to take pictures of anything. The rules have changed now. But my friend, like, this is our first trip, so we had basic information. We had Google Earth, which Ron Wyatt never had, so we could see where we need to go. And there's so much we wanted to explore in those 10 days in April. Um, so some people didn't go because we just, they didn't know whether we would have access to the Split Rock. That was the forbidden military area, the Rock of Horeb. But so you can spend all this money going thousands of dollars, and then, like, let's say you denied entry, then you just wasted all that money. But so one of the three miracles is when we got there, we had so the very first site we wanted to see was Mount Sinai. Like, actually, go to the Golden Calf altar, go to the base, climb the mountain, go to the cave of Elijah. There's 10 of us, two SUVs. We meet up with this acquaintance. He's an imam just south in a little village just south of Mount Sinai, like a half an hour drive. And this imam is telling my friend, he's like, "Hey, if you want to climb Mount Sinai, it's illegal. But if you guys pay, give me $100 a head, so like $1,000, we'll turn that into the police and bribe them, and then they'll go on vacation, for a day and not be there, and you can climb the mountain, and then no one will arrest you." And so it's like, well, we'll think about it. And this was a Saturday, I remember. And so we go back to Tabuk, which is like 2 hour drive away where our hotel is. We're praying and talking about it. And we're like, look, if God wants us to climb Mount Sinai, we don't have to pay any illegal bribe. He'll open the doors. Let's just go back the next morning. Let's just forget this imam and his $100 bribe per person. And let's just drive to the police station and talk to them directly and say, "Hey, we're business people. We have a visa from this prince. Can we just see the mountain?" In the worst case, they'll just say no. So we get there. So the day before, when we actually drove past the base, but didn't stop. We're like, "There's the mountain." Taking pictures through the windows and driving, but we didn't stop because we were so scared. And it's full of people. Like, there's a village down there now at the base. It's not like when Ron Wyatt was there. So there's cars and Bedouins and children and sheep and people walking around. Well, the very next day, and that Sunday morning when we get there, it's like the rapture had happened. There was nobody around. Our purpose was to drive to the police station to talk to them and then go to the mountain with them. There was no police around. There was no villagers around. So we had like free roam of the area for Sunday. And so guess what we did? We went to the Golden Calf altar site under the fence. 'Cause at that time, the thing was still locked, the main gate. Now it's open for tourists. But we went under the fence and took all our pictures. No one bothered. There's no one around. Then we go to the base. We park the car and we walk. You got to walk like 20 minutes to get to where the altar of Moses is with the marble pillars. We get out there again. Nobody's driving around the area. We decide, hey, let's. We take our pictures of the altar site, the L-shaped animal corral site, and we can see the cave of Elijah up on the side of the mountain. And it's like, hey, that's our goal. We're like trying to do as much as we can in this one day. And so we start hiking up all of it, and we all made it. We had a Korean woman with us. And she had a full black burqa on just to kind of blend in. I think she stuck out more, but anyway, she made it all the way to the top too in the burqa. And so we got to the cave. It was just a great that day. Like, nothing happened. One of the guys even made it to the top of the mountain on that same day. Like, he hiked really fast and got to the burnt mountaintop, the blackened mountaintop. And we went down to the plateau. They say the plateau of the 70 elders, right behind the cave of Elijah. And then we came down the stream bed, my friend and I and the Korean lady. This is the stream bed that Deuteronomy and Exodus talks about, this water that came down out of Mount Sinai, that Moses, when he ground the golden calf, he sprinkled the gold dust into the water and made the Israelites drink it. So the remains of the stream is still there. There's still water. It's parts bubbling up. We documented fig trees growing in the stream bed. the pools of water in it. And this was end of April of 2016. And then this last year, and other people knew about this too, but for myself, this last year, I went up further up that stream bed, this little valley above the altar of Moses, and we documented um, uh, the almond trees. Aaron's rod was made of almond. It was an almond branch. Remember when it budded? And so there are wild almond trees growing on Makla. So I was able to see that. It was that very first day of climbing the mountain, God like opened the door. And we didn't have to bribe anyone. We didn't have to waste $1,000 total. And so we climbed back down, get in the cars, drive back to Tabuk. So that was our very first miracle of the trip. The second one was the very last day of the trip. We saved like the worst thing for last in case we got in trouble. That was going to the Split Rock. Because driving in, it's supposed to be a military zone, and so if you get caught, you could be in big trouble. We had two SUVs, they stand out, and you're driving across these plains of sand, so they can easily see us with all the dirt, turning behind our tires. We come in we come and go from this, we call it the south end to this bottom end. It's a very rough area with a lot of sand traps and deep sand, and you have to gun it without hitting the boulder in front of you, and so you're driving these SUVs. When we get to the Split Rock and no Bedouins are around, this is our first time there. We don't know what to expect. I've seen the old Caldwells videos, so I had brought a professional photographer with me on that trip. And so for my goal, I was just taking pictures of everything to use for videos. We weren't really focused on video work, but we did a lot of photos on that first trip. And so we had no problems. Again, we got out of there just fine. And that was the second miracle, was this being able to access the Split Rock site, which to me was the most special site. Then most people went home, but a few of us, it was like 4 of us out of that 10, we stay another couple days and we climbed to the top of Mount Sinai. So the very last day of our trip there, let's just say back up, the day before, we decided to go back to the base of Mount Sinai, just the 4 of us, and we wanted to do some video work finally, and like we're not running around. So we parked the car and we're like crouching and hiding behind bushes, running to the next boulder until we get to the altar of Moses, and we're filming there. So the goal, and so it was an Air Force guy, and then there was me and my friend, and then the 2 Europeans. They just stay in the car. They don't want to go up walk 20 minutes to the altar of Moses. But we told everybody, be back at the car by 12 noon for lunch. And so the Air Force guy, he's really good on keeping track of time and all that. Most of the time we find that. Well, we get back, my friend and I, we do all our video work. We get back to the car at noon, and there's this other guy. He's not around. And we're calling his name. We're looking, and we're getting desperate. We thought maybe he got arrested. Maybe he fell because he went off on his own. And so maybe he broke a leg and we can't hear him because it's such a big area. So if he's crying out, we had all these worst case scenarios going through our head. And finally we said, let's drive to the police station. Maybe the police out know. Maybe we can get him from there or whatever, talk him out of getting arrested. So as we're pulling out, we said, no, we should stay, because what if he's at the base? He comes to the car and we're not there. What will he do? So we go back to the base, park. I start walking the fence line. The Saudis, they put this fence after Ron had found the site. Between 85 and 88, when Larry Williams and Bob Cornuke show up, the Saudis fenced off the whole base of the mountain. But around the mid-90s, half the fence fell over because of flood. It goes to a wadi, so these dry riverbeds, they get flooded in the springtime. The fence fell over, and so you can walk in like on top of the fence now and get into the site. And so I'm walking that fence line, and I start hearing this sound, and it's like I thought it was this Air Force guy giving me a secret signal. It was like an animal, like it wasn't sheep. It was 2 baby goats. I come around the corner, and there's this bush, and I'm looking at the bush, and at the base are these 2 small baby goats, and they were just born because they had still the umbilical cord, and they were so hungry they were like sucking on each other.
Was the bush on fire?
No. It was the ram in the thicket.
Yeah,
I didn't even hear a voice say, "Take off your boots, your shoes," but I looked down. I was like, "What are these animals?" There was no sheep around, and so I was like, "Oh, they got abandoned or lost." So I motioned the other 2 who were looking for this Air Force guy. I said, "Hey, look what I found!" They come running down, and we're holding them. And then the guy shows up, the one we're looking for. Mm-hmm. He just wanders in and says, "Hey, what's going on, guys?" And he's like, "Hey, look what we found." And then we're like, "Where did you come from?" And he just lost track of time, but thankfully he was okay. But now we have these baby goats. We're like, what do we do with them? This is the third miracle. So what happened? We take them back to the SUV and we try to give them away to the next shepherd we see driving out of the village. And this kid, he was just a Saudi kid. He's like, no, I don't want them. Whatever reason, he thought maybe like this belonged to someone else. He'd get in trouble with two extra sheep show up, or the goats, whatever. So he wouldn't take them. So okay, let's go to the gas station. Because now there's a gas station at the base of Mount Sinai, and so we go there. It's like we'll just give it to the gas station attendant. So now we have the goat. I have this all in video now. It's on my YouTube channel.
How far we've come. Now there's a gas station at the base of Mount Sinai.
I know. Yeah. You don't run out of gas for your chariot. So we get to the gas station, and now it's not empty. Now there's like, we took photos with this group. There's maybe 6 or 7 Saudis and one Afghanistan guy. He's there. And they're all super friendly. Like we're like, what's going on? So we point to the animals, and they actually, one of the guys spoke, pretty good English or broken English. We said, hey, we found them, somewhere. We didn't tell them where. So we found them, and so they said, oh, they could tell the goats were hungry. So we finally go into the gas station. We get some baby formula bottles. We actually teach the goats to nurse them, to suck on the bottles. It took a while, and I'm videoing this whole time. It's on my YouTube channel again, all these series of clips I put together that day. And so after we get the goats all fed and they give them away to one of their local shepherds, they invite us to chai and coffee, tea and Arabic coffee behind the gas station. There's this fire pit area, and so we all take group photos. They're serving us this. They're like so happy and friendly. Like most of them are in their 20s or early 30s, younger Saudis. And then most of them are from Tabuk, the nearby city, the province capital. But because it's near the summer months, and it's the base of Mount Sinai is about 5,000 foot elevation. So think of mile high, like Denver. So this is cooler, high desert area. Tabuk is like in the middle of the desert. It's very hot. So a lot of Saudis will come out to the mountains where it's cooler. So that's what these guys were doing. And, it's a weekend too. This was a Friday. So it's their weekends, Friday, Saturday. So these 20, 30-year-olds were out there, and they become our like instant friends and buddies. And here's the interesting thing. The guy who spoke the best English, and his father owned that gas station, and his father, later we found out, is the one who met Jim and Penny Caldwell, his name was Ibrahim. And this guy, his name is Ibrahim, and he's like the village sheik or elder. And when Ron was there, and when David Fazal in 85, he said there was one, and Fazal drew a little map. He said there was one tent of one Bedouin at that time. Now it's a village, but the tent had this one Bedouin named Ibrahim. He had all these little kids. And so we met his son, I won't name his name, but this son, his father owned the gas station, and his father met Ron Wyatt and Jim and Penny Caldwell. But anyways, this is what happened. His son tells us, do you know that this is Jebel Musa? Now, we don't lie, but we played dumb. We didn't want them to know we were just like 10 days climbing all over this place. We're like, what? This is what? Jebel Musa's right here? And he's like, yeah, I'll show you. Oh, really? Okay, sure. We'll go with you. And so all together, not sneaking behind the boulders like we were earlier that morning when we found the baby goats, we're like in the open, walking from that gas station all the way up to the side of the mountain. We go through near the guard shack, which is another where the fence is still standing tall, and there's a big sign saying "Don't enter." And we go around the fence with these Saudi guys. They don't care. Like they bring us all the way to the altar of Moses, and I'm videoing this whole time. And then we get to the altar, and then the Saudi guy who spoke the broken English, he's like, "Do you know what happened here?" We're like, "Oh no." And so he said, "Let me tell you." And so he actually explained. I don't know how he knew this, but he actually explains the whole process of the sacrifice. The sacrificial, he said, the animals would come down this chute here. They turned the corner. Right here, they were like doing cut the throat. And this is where Moses sacrifice. I don't know if there's some YouTube video he saw that had it, or they just knew this information over the years. It could have been a combination of. But at any rate, it was special for us because I was filming this, and here's this local guy telling us the story of what happened here 3,500 years ago at the base of the real Mount Sinai. And we're not sneaking around. We're just like standing tall in the open, and no one's bothering us. And then after that, they take us over to the altar of golden calf. They were a little more scared there, his friends. The guy whose father owns the gas station, he's like, "Oh no, go under the fence, no problem." But his friends were like, "Oh no, the police will come." Like they were more scared about getting under the fence there than the base of Mount Sinai. Anyway, we saw both sites, again, but this time with these locals, and he became a good friend of ours. so that we would like talk on WhatsApp all the time. When I finally got a drone into Saudi Arabia, we would do all this. Like the first drone of the top of Mount Sinai we did in February 2017. God opened these doors. He gave us these local people who helped us a lot. Like I slept at this guy's in the building behind the gas station. He has all these extra rooms, and my videographer and we slept there a number of times. And each time we're like, "Hey, can we fly the drone?" No problem. And so we'd fly, we got so much footage at the base of Mount Sinai because he let us. And this is the guy we found because the other guy gets lost, not lost, but doesn't pay attention to the clock, and we find the baby goats. And because there's two baby goats, we take them to the gas station, and that's how we meet this Saudi guy whose father owns that property there.
Wow.
And so that was a miracle. That was one of the biggest miracles because we were able to use him, not in a bad way, but in a good way, like to get things done, do more research around that mountain, and actually, I felt like everyone's friendly. No one was, we had people want money from us, but not like with a gun. It's like, hey, my brother broke his leg. Can you help? And you just feel like, okay, here's something like $200 or something. But he's been that way, where he's helped us for different things. And even once I came to Saudi Arabia, I was super sick, and he went right to the pharmacy, knew exactly what I needed, and like he could speak Arabic, obviously, and I couldn't. And he got me my medicine. Next day, I was much better. He's from that area. He lives in Tabuk mainly, but I met his father. His father lives at the base still. He doesn't live in Tabuk.
So what the altar to the golden calf? What did it look like from? I'm sure you were right next to it, right?
Yeah. So the Bible calls it he set up in the biblical account. It says he set up an altar. Now the site we're looking at now, it's a bunch of natural boulders. Now some people will speculate, the Israelites, they pushed them up. You can tell like the base of it actually goes underground, so it's an outcrop of rock, and there's huge boulders piled up. Maybe some of the smaller ones the Israelites might have put, but maybe they built. Again, speculation, because this is an outcrop area where there's a ton of animal petroglyphs, especially cows, and a lot of them, again, the Saudis, their archaeologists said it was Egyptian style, like the way the horns are and how the cows are carved. They look like ancient Egyptians carved it, not like a local Saudi.
So in other words,
So
it's not a local breed.
yeah, exactly. And you can tell. In fact, I talked to an archaeologist who's involved with rock art, and she's from Kansas University, and she was telling me, she's retired now, but she said you can tell on how they draw the cows and their the banding and the horn style what the breed of the cattle are. It says all these cattle you see drawn on Saudi rock art around the country, they're all domesticated. They're not wild animals. These are domesticated cattle. And there's different breeds you can tell and styles, and they're drawn. And like it says in they published an archaeological book trying to disprove that this is Mount Sinai back in 2002 or three. It's called Al Bid, and it's about this area. And they mentioned Ron Wyatt and Larry Williams and Bob Cornuke. And they try to say, no, this is just a Neolithic site, or it's Nabatean, Roman. They ignore the whole Old Testament. They don't think the Midians, and that's what's changed. And we were talking about earlier, like what's different now, like how like by the Saudis preserving it, they're keeping away people who want to destroy it because they think it's pagan, like you're worshiping this. Like this is where they worship a golden calf, and so that's one thing that has changed is that 20 years ago in 2002, whenever they published this book, they were really attacking the idea that there's no history from the Old Testament in the area. That's what they were claiming. Now you have French archaeologists. You have publishing papers about Midian, about Al-Bada, where Jethro lived, and with the approval of the Saudi government, because they worked together with the Saudi archaeologists, these French archaeologists. You have Neom coming in, and they're saying in their public signs that this will be an outdoor museum, the Land of the Prophets Museum, they call it, because Jethro the prophet, Moses the prophet, and then Muhammad, they say, is a prophet, and that these three prophets, that's like their land. So they call it the Land of the Prophets Museum.
They have a place where they think they know it's Jethro's house, right?
Well, no, not the house itself. They call it. This is a misnomer. So which means there's some names that were applied later. So there are Nabatean caves. Nabateans are the guys around the time of Christ who the capital was Petra, the famous Indiana Jones scene, the carved inside the cliff, the facade of these buildings. And Petra's in modern day Jordan right now. But they also inhabited the Nabateans, this group of people, all the way from Petra, Jordan, south into Saudi Arabia, including Al-Bada, which is the modern town where the traditional home of Jethro. And so they have these tombs carved on the west side of the town on the cliffs there, and people would call it they're Nabatean tombs, but they'd call it in the past, like in the Middle Ages, travelers coming through, they'd call it, hey, these are the tombs of or the house of Jethro, or the caves of Jethro, they'd call it. Or in Arabic literature, the caves of Shuaib. He in the Quran, he's the name given for Jethro, Shuaib. And so even in the Quran, they'll say, this is where Jethro or Shuaib lived. But when you walk inside, you can see the niches where they put the bodies. They're Nabatean burial caves. In fact, I talked to the American archaeologist who they're excavating at the base of these caves. He said they haven't found anything before the Nabateans, like pottery or remains. This is definitely a Nabatean site from the time of Christ. But down in the valley where it's a big fenced off site, it had the oldest remains. They said there they are finding late Bronze Age pottery and remains, including what they call burnt pottery or Midianite pottery. So this would be the time of the Exodus. So yes, in that area of Al-Bada, you do see evidence from the time of the Exodus and Jethro. So one of those places in the middle of the oasis is where Jethro lived. Nowadays, of course, as I mentioned earlier, people took that name and applied it to these caves, half a mile away. So you'll have people say, "Yeah, this is the house of Jethro." So
Okay, so I got a question for you.
mhm.
Where do you think we are in the prophetic timeline? As far as getting close to the tribulation and stuff like that. And if you were to see, like in the next month or two, or sometime really soon, the third temple start being built, and the Antichrist come out on the scene, what's your next move?
Wow, that's a lot there. Well, no, I believe, I think you'd have to be not reading your Bible enough to not believe that we're in the end time, like the very end of the end time. Just all the signs given in Matthew 24, Luke 21, just throughout the New Testament, even parts of the Old Testament, the signs for the end of the age, end of the world, they're all pointing to where we are today. What we're seeing in the news is what Christ and the prophets, the apostles all wrote about and wanted to be alive to see. So definitely, in a timeline for a phase, I don't know how close we are to certain events, but you can't say it's another lifetime away. I just don't see how the world could last longer than another generation. Everything's fallen apart politically, socially, religiously. There's so much hatred in the world to everyone. Uh, the churches are falling apart. No one's preaching the gospel. Not I mean no one, but like you have like false gospels being preached. Just everyone more concerned about themselves. A lot of just you look at Instagram or the social media networks. Everything's about themselves and what they're doing that day, and it's just a total change in the attitude to your fellow man. Again, you can see the riots in England, the wars in the Middle East. There's just a lot of anger and hatred um, in societies. Uh, so for me, you're saying if a certain event happened, whether it's, you're talking about the third temple or the Antichrist. I guess I've never really thought about like what's the next move. And for myself, I don't think I'm just. I don't know for what I do. To me, I just look at it like it's something small. I'm doing my part to get the message out there and using archaeology by being not like in America or someplace else, but being on site to these sites. So when people come visit, I can explain about Noah's Ark, or I can explain about Mount Sinai. Of course, then I started making YouTube videos, and so that's another way to reach people was through online. But I never thought of like what would I? Everything just it falls apart, what would I do? I don't know what my next step would be. Obviously, it'd be probably less tourists. People wouldn't want to travel out here. And I guess I talked to a friend about this. They think the focus would go from like giving a tour and physically showing people to we have I actually have 2 or 3 or 4 hard drives, and we have literally maybe 30 some terabytes of video. All this 4K drone and videos and photos from 2013 and before. There's tons of media from all these sites. Even now, before like now, the things are changing. The Neom with the building, paved roads past the split rock of Horeb, and so we have stuff before they did that. So special these drone videos and when things were better preserved. And so I think the focus for me would be to take what I have. If God says, okay, this is it for you're not get any more tourists coming out here, then I would focus on editing more videos and doing my best to get it out there on the internet. And if certain prophetic events happen, I believe just like Ron, like that these sites will actually mean more because people when they see that a prophecy being fulfilled, they're going to start searching YouTube. They're going to start searching their Bibles and say, oh, so that means Noah's Ark is true, or Mount Sinai happened, and so what's this, and where did it happen? And so I think you'll get more interest when certain events become fulfilled. We see them on the news. They're going to come and look on YouTube and social media or websites, and so I think the focus will be to get the word out more. So that's without coming up with a 5-year plan, a business plan.
Oh yeah,
everything laid out,
month by month of
yeah.
the tribulation.
Yeah, exactly. And then have like those flow charts. Okay, if this happened, the third temple, the Antichrist does this, then my goal is that. Some of the things Christ says, you don't worry about tomorrow. Let it worry about itself. Obviously, it's very exciting to be living in these times, and it's more than just exciting. It's an opportunity to share about the truth, and there are people out there. I mean, that's the thing about these sites. Like I believe Noah's Ark exists. Since I was a kid, before I even saw up on our site in person in college, I believe Mount Sinai happened and God gave the law there, and the Red Sea opened up. I don't need that. I don't need to see the physical proof to believe. But here's the thing: there are people who do that, and so I've been asked before, right, by others the same question, and then the answer is the same in that just like doubting Thomas, God doesn't want anyone to perish. And so different people he can reach different ways. And some people they don't, they just believe, they just like the other disciples, they knew Christ rose from the dead, but Thomas did not. He said, oh, I need to put my hands through those stars.
After all the miracles he's seen him do. After all
so some people want to attack.
Come back.
Yeah, and the people attack Thomas for that. Oh, you're doubting Thomas. It's kind of like a bad thing to call somebody. But God, because he didn't want anyone to perish, and he's a gracious and merciful God. He gave Thomas what he wanted, he needed, and that was physical proof that he had rose from the dead. He appeared before them. He let Thomas see the wounds on his hands and on the side. But he did tell Thomas, blessed are those who basically don't need to see this, but there are those who do, and God is willing to show it to them. And that's where physical, like the sciences from history and archaeology and for what they do in geology for creationism, creationism and the global flood, all these pieces of evidences they're out there, not just to make a scholarly paper and do something, put your name on it. No, this is
at the end of the day, it's just this for the people that want to seek it out, because someone that doesn't want to believe, they can see all the evidence of the world, they're still not going to believe it.
Yeah, that's the thing. People say, "Well, why are you doing this?" Because you're not going to convince them or them. It's like it's not to convince somebody. It's those who the Holy Spirit are leading, and they're actually, as you said, they're searching for truth. It's obviously Thomas was searching for truth because God showed him the truth and he believed. But there are those out there who need this. They're searching, and that's the thing. The Noah's Ark story is there for them, then to the physical site for them to see the videos about it. But not everyone in the world needs that. If you look at what happened to Lazarus, people demanding that the doubters of Christ's time give us a sign, that you are the Son of God and you're the Messiah, and they really wanted a sign, a miracle that God could do. Well, he actually gave them the ultimate one. He made someone come back to life more than once, but Lazarus especially. And guess what happened? even after that happens, the Pharisees want to now, instead of believing, they want to kill Lazarus.
Yeah.
Like the guy who just rose from the dead. Christ has called him back from the dead, and now you want to kill him. Like
Wow.
Christ can just keep calling him back. I laugh at that. Like they were so hardened in their hearts, like Pharaoh, and not wanting to see the truth that was right in front of their face, that they ended up, killing the Messiah, and they wanted to kill Lazarus. And so you do have people like that.
And the
you just
crazy
got to
part
pray
about
for
it
them.
is the crazy part about it is just a few years before, or like what 30 years before, they knew exactly where he was going to be born. They knew when he was going to be born, and somehow in
They
that
knew the
time they forgot.
prophecy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, look what happened. They end up telling the political leaders so they could kill the babies.
Yeah.
So in Bethlehem, they told King Herod, and so yeah, they had different motives. So I can't understand that part where you can see what the Bible prophecies say, like how you're basically going against God, because He said this will happen here, like the Messiah would come here, this will happen, and then these guys, basically are ants, little peons in the sight of God, who's the God of the universe, and they're like, oh, we're gonna kill the baby, or let's kill Lazarus. This is proof that Christ is the Messiah.
Well, Andrew, a lot of people that are listening, they're probably on the fence, or they feel like they're not doing enough for God. And you got to meet Ron Wyatt, and that probably pushed you in the right direction. What is your advice for people that feel like they're not doing enough for God and want to start a ministry? Well, how should they go about it?
I never had. That's a good question, because where I'm at, I never saw myself where I would be here, like on site, or leading tours, or making videos, or talking to people, or doing interviews. I never saw that. Like that wasn't my plan. I didn't come up with a 5-year plan, or didn't have a goal saying, okay, by this time next year, I want to be on like NBC News or something. No, I think what happened, and for me, and I think this will work for others, because there are times in my life too where you're just living your life, or you just don't want to do anything religious, or you're not even thinking about God. You just think about, I got to pay my next bills. Um, I just started doing what little I could, which means for me, it was going on these sites, going to these sites, and taking pictures. And that's okay. I'll take pictures, and then I'll make a little short video. I'm not a video editor, but I start editing my own videos. I'll just put it out there on YouTube. Who knows who'll see it? Maybe 100 people, 5 people, but that was my small little part. Then God started blessing that small effort. I didn't ask God to give me 100,000 views. So now for example, last year we had a well-known church pastor who has a TVN show. He came out to Mount Sinai, and for like 3 or 4 days, I guided him around. I appeared on his videos, the guide, and we talked about each of these sites, the Mount Sinai and the Red Sea crossing, the Split Rock, and that video went viral. We have now almost 1 million views on that. And on top of it, I went from like 20,000 subscribers in 2 months to 100,000 plus subscribers. I didn't plan it, didn't know, but it just on its own organically happened because people knew this. And so God opened the opportunity to broaden the audience. So I did my small little part, and then God blessed it. And I think for someone who's wanting to get involved, or want to do more for the kingdom, it does come down to just being willing and open, saying, "Hey, God, here I am." Remember when Samuel, he's just working as a child, the prophet Samuel, in the tabernacle. He's doing his small little part. He's being trained by Eli, but he's like, have him keep watch of the tabernacle at night. He hears God's voice, and he's like, "Here I am." And God had called him to ministry, and he was just doing his small little part. He wasn't thinking of some grand television ministry or being the next mega church pastor. And I think that's the way it is for what God wants. Everyone has their part to do, and you just pray to God to open the doors, to bless, whatever the talent He's given you. If you're a writer, a videographer, or a speaker, to use that talent for the kingdom, not for yourself, and then God will bless that effort.
Yeah. And I guess stay humble above all else, right? I mean, look at Ron
Yeah,
Wyatt.
it's never about
He
you.
took your call.
Yeah.
Like I said at the beginning, he was able to take the call from a 14 little kid. With God in his heart.
Later I found out from like I guess I didn't become annoying, but they were so nice about it. when I'd call you, like, "Oh no, this is Andrew." Pass the phone on. Yeah, this kid. Yeah, I mean, I had very deep. In fact, they later published in one of the newsletters said they mentioned my name because of something. It was a answer, a rebuttal to critics, to because Dr. Andrew Snelling from Australia at the time had wrote a very, I thought, an unfair critique of the Drupanar site. And so they wrote a rebuttal, and I was asked for it. It was like a pretty thick document. They photocopied it and mailed me a copy. Then they decided to put it in their newsletter because I had asked for it. So they thought, well, everyone else should see this too. And so they mentioned my name. They said, oh, this kid who's 14 years old or so, who asked us like a lot of questions. Basically, he asked for it, and we thought everyone else should see this rebuttal too. And I was very what's the word where you keep at it, So if he would answer my question one way, I'd call back and ask it a different way. Sometimes Ron, he didn't meet me till 1995, and in fact, my second or third call, I remember he was kind of concerned because I was asking very detailed questions. Like I was like, well, okay, if this is Elam, one of the Exodus, then how far away is the next camping site? And he thought I was like trying to map something out, and he thought I was working for the other team, the Larry and Bob Cornuke, who sadly at the time they went to Saudi Arabia. These two guys, based on Ron and David Fazl's map, they went there in '88.
I gotta give it up to you as a 14-year-old kid to already know where all these things are or how close to the proximity. That is something else. Until today, I don't really know.
Well, I love maps and geography and all that and history, but So Ron actually said, he said, I'm not going to take any more questions about this. I was like, oh, okay. Then he said, and I asked him why, and he said, you could be. And he actually said this, and I was stunned. But looking back, I could see because people have disappointed him and taken, stole stuff from him. And, just like these two guys, Larry and Bob, hate to say it, they basically came back and said, we found Mount Sinai, and didn't mention Ron Wyatt had given them a map. But anyways, so Ron on the phone said, well, you could be working for Larry Williams. I'm like, but I'm just this. I actually said this. I remember because when I said it, my brother walked in the room and I said, I'm just this 13-year-old kid. I was so confused. I actually got my age wrong. And my brother yelled out, you're not 13, you're 14. And I was like, shh, I'm on the phone. Now you really think I'm lying. But I mean, that stood out in my mind that Ron was very paranoid. But, later on, I knew why, hearing all the different stories that happened. Yeah. He had people call up. I heard this from his family where they would say people would call the airport and say, oh, they have drugs in the luggage. So they would get random searches. Wow. Or they'll cancel the tickets. Back then, I guess you could easily call up and say, I'm this person, please cancel this flight. Cost some money. So Ron was very careful telling people where he was going, when he was going overseas, and this information, because like Noah's wife's grave could get dug up. So, but I was just this kid. I just wanted to know all the details and why he thought certain ways, and so.
Well, Andrew, it's been a pleasure. Unfortunately, we gotta go. But can you please do us a big favor and pray us out?
Sure. Yeah, let's bow our head. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this time you've given us. How precious it is that we could just spend talking about your things and glorify your name and give credit where credit is due, and all these things that you preserved for these end times so that people can become saved and get to know you and who you are. We know we are living in the last days, and events around us are changing everywhere, every day. Something's happening that's pointing to your soon return. I just ask that those who are searching for truth will find it, and that we can be there to help them, open up the way that we can meet these people and say what needs to be said to them, and point out exactly what they need to see in your word. Thank you for this opportunity, and bless Sergio and his ministry and what he does here, and may people be blessed by our conversation tonight. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen and amen. Again, thank you, Andrew. For all you guys out there listening, this has been another episode of Grotto in the Tar Pit. See you next time.